4 years ago this month, I reported an assault that happened not far from where we stand now. The man was a doctor, a legend, a healer of Olympians, and I was just a woman with a story that was easy to cover up and ignore. Telling my truth was painful and challenging. Being told I was not assaulted and denied the justice I deserved was even worse. Too often reports of sexual assault are ignored, silenced, and buried because of the stigma attached. This must change. Removal of this stigma is essential to making headway with this issue, and that is why it is so important that we continue to expand the dialogue about sexual assault. Conversations about sexual misconduct and consent need to start early and openly so that every person, no matter their age or gender, knows they alone own their bodies. Through education and honest discussion, we can ensure a safer future for men, women, children, and all alike. It is time for our culture to change. It is time for our culture to shift from enabling predators to empowering survivors. When a person is mugged on the street, we manage not to blame their appearance, their mannerisms, and we refrain from attacks on the person's image or character. We treat that mugging as a crime, just as we should. So why do we treat survivors of sexual assault any differently? Have they too not been stolen from? The losses sustained are devastating beyond measure. They have also been robbed. Survivors of sexual assault are traumatized and taken advantage of. They lose their sense of safety, their ability to trust. Sexual assault deeply damages an individual's psyche, confusing and manipulating their sense of self-worth. It is the only crime I can think of where the victim receives just as much, if not more, blame than the perpetrator. We, as a society, have to listen to the voices of those who have been blamed for far too long, because when survivors speak their truths, we are reminded who is truly guilty. Blame belongs solely to the assaulter, the rapist, the pedophile, and, in far too many cases, the institutions that enabled them. I am here to tell the world to listen. Listen to our stories, hear our voices, and help us bring this cycle of abuse to end. We cannot be afraid to talk about sexual violence. Without conversations, without open and honest discussions, we will never remove the stigma that has paralyzed and silenced so many innocent victims for far too long. While the shame associated with sexual assault persists, bullying and blaming will continue to damage the people who deserve our support and perpetuate the toxic culture we are so desperately working to change. When survivors receive pressure not to speak about the evils they endured, when they are filled with guilt and self-doubt because our culture tells them it is their fault they were assaulted, predators feel free to continue carrying out these devastating violations. This cannot be allowed to happen, not when my fellow survivors and I have suffered for so long, not when we have come so far. Today, I stand in front of you an empowered survivor with a message for anyone that has suffered the injustice of sexual assault. You are not alone and your story matters. This fight is not over. It is only just beginning, and I promise you, my sister survivors and I will not rest until you feel empowered too. Thank you.